It's the basketball show for the basketball fan. Once again, on the wide world of podcasts here on 1010XL. I'm RJ Saunders. Thanks so much again for tuning into episode 2 of this podcast. Your way on to the show. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think about everything that's going on in the association, as well with Team USA in their Olympic play, hoping for yet another gold medal. And as we matriculate and journey through this offseason and into the NBA regular season, make sure to like as well as subscribe to the Open Gym podcast. So I'll start with this, and we're recording this on a Thursday, but since we last spoke, the USA has now gone 2-0 against their respective teams in group play when it comes to the Olympics in Paris, defeating the South Sudan. However, there was a big story in Team USA's first game against Serbia, a game in which Jason Tatum did not play. And the whole basketball world, at least a few were, they were up in arms over the fact that the NBA champion and also NBA 2K25 cover athlete did not play any minutes in the game against Serbia in a blowout win at the hands of the red, white, and blue, something we like to call garbage time, in the words of Marv Albert. And the funny thing about it was Tyrese Halliburton didn't play either, yet no one had said anything about that. But I can kind of see this thing from two sides. Here's side number one. Charles Barkley was on SiriusXM radio, and he talked about how Chuck Daly, the coach at that time for Team USA in 1992, had promised everyone, or had given everyone, kind of a vote of confidence that they would see playing time on the floor en route to what would be their gold medal finish. Even Christian Laettner, who was the only college guy that was on that USA team, the dream team, if you will, I think saw 4 minutes of playing time in that gold medal game in Barcelona. And he says this, quote, "You can't expect everybody to go over there and practice and then not play in the damn Olympics." That I understand. Jason Tatum probably could have taken this summer off. Heck, Jason Tatum could have played with Team USA this year. I can argue the fact that maybe LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry, the only reason why they're playing is because of the fact that Team USA lost in the World Games to Germany, and they now want to call themselves the Avengers, bring everyone together, and win a gold medal, and now also taking their dominance back from the world as the best country to play basketball, and we have the best players. Now, here's the contrarian opinion. Brian Windhorst, who I believe is in Paris now, says that Steve Kerr's game plan against Serbia was that of playing guards that are on his roster that could defend the guards of Serbia, and you were also looking to give different looks to Nikola Jokic with your three bigs and Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, and Bam Adebayo. So playing a lot of wings that could not guard point guards, not saying that Jason Tatum cannot guard point guards, but he wanted guys such as Derek White, Drew Holiday, Anthony Edwards. He wanted those guys to be the guys that could guard the guards of Serbia. And this is what you need when you're Team USA. You needed these glue guys. Remember a few weeks ago, Jaylen Brown, everyone's up in arms that he didn't make the team and that maybe he would have started voicing out his resume and what he's doing when it comes to his accomplishments in the NBA, being the NBA Finals MVP. Guys like Drew, guys like Derek White are going to buy into the fact that they need to be defensive players on this team and also knock down the open three. I don't know if Jason Tatum could sell himself out to the fact that he's going to be a guy that's not going to be looked to do much for Team USA. They're not looking for him to be a star, unfortunately, because you have LeBron James there. You have Steph Curry there. You also have Kevin Durant there, who's the leading scorer all time in Team USA history. and is probably looked at as one of the best all-time red, white, and blue players to don those colors in Olympic play. But if you look at JT, he's wearing number 10, a la that of Kobe Bryant, and I believe that he wants to showcase his dominance. When you have an embarrassment of riches that Steve Kerr has, this is not the All-Star game. This is not somewhere where it's just show us what you got. This is a celebratory thing. No, you're actually trying to win. And what Steve Kerr is going to do is going to game plan to put his best guys on the floor. And listen, all of his game plans in which that he has done right now, including the game that they're going to play on Friday, all of his game plans have worked. All of his starting lineups have worked. And I think there are a lot of guys who are going to buy into the fact, even Anthony Edwards, for example, who said that he was going to be the number one option, if you remember so vaguely. I think he's even sold out to the fact that, listen, I'm not going to average 20 points a game. I'm not probably going to even average 10 points a game. But how do I get on the floor? That's by playing defense. And whatever game plan that our head coach has, I have to sell myself out to that fact. Again, Steve Kerr reportedly went to Jason Tatum and said, listen, I don't know how many minutes you're going to play. He also did say post-game that he felt like an idiot for not playing Jason Tatum. The question now is for Jason Tatum, who did play in Game 2 against the South Sudan. He was actually named a starter in that game, and he only had 4 points. Can he sell himself out to be something that of a specialist? That I don't know yet. You look at guys like Devin Booker. Devin Booker, who can create his own shot and is one of the best in the league right now in doing that. Not a guy in which you're saying, listen, we're looking for you to create off the dribble. He's more of a guy that you're saying, look, if they collapse on Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, we kick it out to you. We're looking for you to hit the wide open shot. A guy like Kevin Durant almost looking to do the same thing. You saw in the Serbia game, he knocked down, I believe, his first 5 threes when he came in. And it's crazy that he's also coming in off of the bench for Team USA. But you look at a guy like Kevin Durant, who probably should be shooting more threes during the NBA season if you see how he plays with Team USA, but he also has taken almost this Carmelo Anthony role where he's just able to step out and be a spot-up shooter, and that's what made Carmelo Anthony so great with the red, white, and blue, the national team that we call the USA, when he was winning his gold medals. Jason Tatum may be looking to do what LeBron is doing, where we're seeing LeBron James damn near put up triple-double performances, both in the showcase games and in the 2 games that the national team has played already. All in all, for me, however, this almost felt like a non-story. I know there were a lot of people that had their opinions on it, but it really didn't feel like it was all what it needed to be in terms of creating such a big rigmarole with Team USA. As mentioned, Tyrese Halliburton is probably looked at as one of the best guards in the entire association. He didn't see the floor at that time. I don't hear the world up in arms about the fact that Joel Embiid did not play against the South Sudan. Now, much of that may be because of the fact that not too many people care for Joel Embiid being on Team USA, felt like he could have been in 2 or 3 other places. Probably also said you didn't need 3 bigs against the South Sudan, and that's fair. But it's also fair to argue that if Team USA wins in the World Games and they don't lose to Germany, I think a few of these guys aren't playing. That would equal Jason Tatum probably having more minutes and more opportunities to showcase his stardom fresh off of coming off an NBA championship. Right now, he's not able to do that. So with this team, you're going to have to find a way to get on the floor and just be a specialist at something. If that's spot-up shooting, let it be that. However, the argument to that is Jason Tatum's not a great spot-up shooter. Jason Tatum, if he wants to be looked at as more of a slasher, that may be his thing. May also just be a guy where you're saying, listen, we just need you to defend the other team's best wing defender. Although you have LeBron James in that, I certainly do believe behind Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum could be a guy that you could ask to be on the other team's best perimeter defender game in and game out until you start getting to the medal round. Again, these are only my opinions here. I would love to hear yours in the comments section below. But I also want to hear from Brian Toporek of Forbes magazine. He also does a great job with the Bleacher Report. He also does great things with the Liberty Ballers, who really give you an inside scoop on the Philadelphia 76ers. Also hosts his own podcast called the NBA Pod. Let's get deeper into this Team USA thing. Also, who are the winners and losers of the NBA free agency? We'll find out all that and more with Brian Toporek here on Open Gym on the 1010XL Wide World of Podcasts. Back here again on 1010XL and the Wide World of Podcasts, we now welcome a man who's now a friend of the station. You mainly hear him on Hacker After Dark. He is Brian Toporek. He is the co-host of the NBA Pod, as well as the senior multi-platform editor at Bleacher Report. He's also a contributor to a couple places, Forbes magazine and the Liberty Ballers, who give you the best Philadelphia 76ers coverage around. You can follow him on X and or Twitter, whatever you're calling it these days, at B Toporek. That is Toporek. And he is so kind to give us a couple moments of his time here on the show. Brian, thanks for a couple moments, man. How are you?
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Absolutely. So I want to get started with Team USA. Jason Tatum, just a couple of days ago, doesn't play in Team USA's first matchup against Serbia. The basketball world is now up in arms. He plays in the second game, only had 4 points, but I don't know if Tatum not playing was a personal thing to Steve Kerr. I could be wrong. What were your thoughts on him having a DNP next to his name against Serbia?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are just blowing everything with Team USA out of proportion.
Right.
Steve Kerr said it's hard to find minutes for 12 guys in a 40-minute game, which is what FIBA games are. They are not 48 minutes.
Right.
So, we saw Joel Embiid this past game against South Sudan. He was the one who gets the DNP. You've got 12 of the best basketball players on the planet.
Right.
There's only so many minutes to go around, and you don't want to be jerking guys in and out and, only having them play 10, 15 minutes each. It's going to be hard for them to establish any chemistry, continuity, rhythm. So, Steve Kerr has said, I'm going to continue altering rotations, lineups, minutes, who starts. We saw it against South Sudan where AD moved into the starting lineup as well as Jason Tatum after the DNP. So I think this is just going to continue to change on a game by game and matchup by matchup basis, which is exactly what we see in the NBA playoffs.
Absolutely. And when it comes to Team USA and this USA team in particular, where do you rank them in terms of the past USA teams that we have had? I mean, we had the great Dream Team in 1992. Dream Team 2 feels like it's a slept-on team. The Redeem Team in '08, that 2012 team, I feel like many people forget. But it looks like this is the greatest collection of talent, maybe, that Team USA has put together. But in your opinion, where does this team rank amongst the all-time teams when it comes to the national squad?
Yeah, I would say it's certainly up there. It's really hard to pick who had the most talented team because, now we're in very much the twilight of LeBron, potentially Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. Those guys are still incredible, but they're not what they were in their respective primes. But now you have up-and-comers like Anthony Edwards, Jason Tatum, Tyrese Halliburton on this team as well. So it's, I have not given it enough thought, although I do believe at Bleacher Report we plan on at the end of this tournament, assuming Team USA wins gold. I think we are planning to do a ranking like that. So I would encourage everyone to go to BR in a couple weeks and check that out.
Absolutely. He is the host of the NBA Pod. He is Brian Toporek joining us here on Open Gym. So moving to the NBA for a moment, the Philadelphia 76ers, that fan base has been patient with the process. It's been a roller coaster of emotions since drafting Joel Embiid. The Ben Simmons thing doesn't work. You trade Markelle Fultz. James Harden was the latest to request a trade and ultimately went to the Los Angeles Clippers. So now you acquire Paul George in the offseason, and I feel that's going to be a dangerous big three in the Eastern Conference with Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey, assuming that those three remain healthy. but the East is going to be so tough this year with teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, teams like the New York Knicks, etc. Should this not work out, is this it in terms of the process? I don't know if you can do another installment of the process after this. What is your take on this if this doesn't work out?
Yeah, I think they are very much in all-in mode right now. They know Paul George is 34, Joel Embiid is 30, so it's going to be really hard. If things go south, it's probably because Paul George begins to drop off and the age curve is not going to be kind to him, which would suggest it'll be very hard to move off of his contract if that's the case. So I think it'd be tricky to outside of, I mean, I guess you could trade Tyrese Maxey. Like that could sustain a win now window, but I don't know if that's necessarily the smart move for the Sixers. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair guess to say that this is the last big iteration of the team around Joel Embiid. And if things go south here, you probably do have to start seriously considering what does this team look like without him at some point.
What were your initial thoughts on the Paul George acquisition?
I thought it was honestly outside of LeBron James, which never really seemed realistic. I think it's the best case scenario. I know they were in some rumors about, should they go after Brandon Ingram, Lauri Markkanen, someone along those lines, but being able to acquire a player like Paul George without having to give up anything to acquire him. They didn't have to give up a single draft pick, was a huge coup for Daryl Morey and the Sixers. And, this is exactly what they envisioned when they came up with this plan, really last offseason. They asked Tyrese Maxey to hold off on signing this extension. And they said, look, we can create enough cap space, we can sign a superstar. And it's very rare for a team with having the reigning MVP at the time and an up-and-coming star like Tyrese Maxey. It's very rare to be able to sign a player of that caliber. So not only did they get him, but I think the way they rounded out the rest of their roster was frankly incredible. I did not see the Caleb Martin signing coming at all. I figured he would get more money than he ended up getting. And I think that was, I write a lot about this salary cap, CBA stuff. And I think one of the big blind spots for me was just how much the middle class was going to struggle this summer. We saw it, Caleb Martin is one example, obviously. Gary Trent Jr. signing a minimum deal with the Milwaukee Bucks. Tyus Jones signing a minimum deal with the Phoenix Suns. Like, guys of that caliber should be earning a lot more money than they are. So I think the Sixers were really fortunate that, they correctly anticipated how the market would react to this new CBA, and they were in position to pounce.
Brian Toporek, our guest, he is the co-host of the NBA Pod, also the senior multi-platform editor for Bleacher Report. So we talk about the Paul George acquisition to the city of brotherly love, but were there any other moves across the association that you liked so far during the offseason?
Yeah, I loved what the Thunder did. The Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey, not having to give up a single draft pick, even though they have about 70.
Yeah.
It's incredible work for the Thunder front office. I liked the Isaiah Hartenstein signing as well. I know it's, on paper it's an overpay, but they don't really have to care. It doesn't affect their team building strategy at all for the next few years. And then, they declined the team options on Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, re-signed both of them to what will wind up being value contracts down the road. So, I mean, they're just a terrifying team. They already won 57 games last year with the number one seed in the West. Add two big pieces, still have all of this flexibility moving forward. They honestly feel too big to fail at this point. So big shout out to them. I know there's some skepticism about DeMar DeRozan in Sacramento, but I'm at least intrigued by that one. I think it was a low cost, relatively low risk acquisition. I don't think it's going to push them, to be a championship contender or anything like that. But I do think it was a smart move to get a player of that caliber without having to give up a ton. Although the 2031 first round pick swap that they gave to the Spurs could come back to bite them. way down the line.
Right.
I actually like the Spurs getting in on that trade too, getting the pick swap, getting Harrison Barnes, signing Chris Paul this offseason. I think they're going to be a lot more competitive next year than they were this past year, and that's really terrifying with a guy like Victor Wembanyama front and center. I think that the Spurs, we even saw it toward the end of last year. Wemby just got increasingly better as the season went on, and once they stopped messing around with Jeremy Sohan as the point guard,
right?
Because he's a 6'9" forward, he's not actually a point guard. Now you have Chris Paul, one of the greatest point guards of all time, throwing lobs to a 7'4" guy. I mean, he made a living off of that with DeAndre Jordan. Imagine what he's going to do with Wemby. So I think those were some of my favorite moves of the summer.
Were there any losers in your opinion? I mean, I'm a big Los Angeles Lakers fan. It seems to me that they're still struggling to make any sort of moves. I really thought the Atlanta Hawks were going to get off of Trae Young and his contract as well. It seems like they're struggling to find a partner to potentially get Trae Young off of their books. Were there any losers in your opinion during this offseason?
Yeah, was not wild about Denver letting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope go. I know they are confident in Christian Brown being able to step in and replace him, but who then replaces Christian Brown off the bench? It's a bet on youth, and I understand it. I think it's the right move to build a sustainable team. But when you have Nikola Jokic in his prime as a 3-time MVP, you won a championship 2 years ago, I think it's a tough sell to fans to lose Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, and now KCP over the last 2 off seasons and get nothing in return for any of those guys. So was not wild about that. I think the Bulls deserve credit for picking a direction, but again, not getting a single draft pick for Alex Caruso when they probably could have had at least 1, if not 2, at the trade deadline.
Right.
That was not great. I think they frankly just waited too long. So maybe it's unfair to ding them for that, but I think they needed to pick a direction in February, if not last off season, and they could have gotten a lot more. The Sixers were a team that was trying to trade for Andre Drummond. They made very clear they were offering multiple second-round picks for Andre Drummond. The Bulls stood pat at the deadline. Drummond signed with them in free agency this summer, and now the Bulls have nothing to show for it. So I think just not great asset management on their end. And yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but your Lakers, just by virtue of not making a bigger move, they're running back the same team that made the play-in tournament last year, even though LeBron and AD were pretty healthy for most of the season.
Right.
So, I don't know that they can bank on that happening again. And they're leaning on, well, Gabe Vincent's going to come back this year, but if you trade off, Gabe Vincent's going to play more, but LeBron and AD are going to play less. I guarantee you the opponents are going to take that trade-off anytime.
RJ Saunders here with Brian Toporek of Bleacher Report as well as the NBA Pod. I really liked what I saw from rookies such as Tristan Da Silva from the Orlando Magic in Summer League. Dalton Connect seemed to make a name for himself towards the end. Houston seems to have done it again with another strong draft pick, and Reed Shepherd really turned some heads during his time in Vegas. But were there any other names for you that you saw during the NBA Summer League that you feel are going to be names to watch this regular season once we get to October?
Yeah, I think you touched on the big ones. This draft class was not supposed to be the strongest coming in, so I think it's hard to read too much in the Summer League at times. I know there was a lot of consternation about Alex Sarr. I think he had a 0 of 15 game, and everyone was freaking out about that. I think it's worth reminding everyone that there's a lot of time for these guys to get better, and there have been a number. I think it was Steph Curry who shot like garbage during his first Summer League, and things worked out for him. So I would just advise everyone, if you're panicked about how your favorite teams, rookies played during Summer League, calm down. There's still a lot of time. They are not busts just because they struggled during a 4-game sample size.
And the final one for you before we let you go here, I mean, Is it Boston's world and we're just living it in terms of them repeating? I mentioned earlier in our talk that, teams like the Orlando Magic and the Cleveland Cavaliers really bringing back the same group. You are also going to have Milwaukee there. Also the New York Knicks, the Philadelphia 76ers. They're going to have a lot to say within the East, and the Western Conference is getting better and also getting younger in terms of talent. Is Boston still the favorite in your opinion, or would you take the field here?
Oh, I would take the field for sure. I mean, Boston is the favorite,
Right.
but I don't think they're such a commanding favorite. I don't think this is, a late 2010s Warriors level or even like Miami Heatles level from the early 2010s. Yeah, I mean, look, they're a great team. I think they also got pretty fortunate along the way in this playoff run. I know Boston fans are sick of hearing that, but it's undeniably true. They, every team they faced had a major injury. They also had a major injury in Kristaps Porzingis. So again, I don't want to take anything away from them,
Right.
but who's to say that they're going to have the same level of fortune in this year's playoffs? And as you mentioned, a lot of teams, Philly and New York in the East, really loaded up. I mean, Milwaukee too. The Gary Trent Jr.
Yes.
addition is big for them, and they got a couple other pieces off the bench, adding Taurean Prince on a minimum deal as well, Delon Wright as well. So I think there's a very strong top group in the East, and then out west, the Nuggets might be a little weaker. OKC is going to be a lot stronger.
Ooh.
Memphis should be back in the mix this year
Right.
after no one's really talking about them, but
Right.
they were the 2 seed 2 years ago. Like they're a very good team. They just had
absolutely are.
Jaws injuries and or Jaws suspension, and there's a bunch of injuries
Right.
submarine them last year. So I think Boston is deservedly heading into this season as the favorite, but if I had to pick between them or the field, I think the field would be heavily favored.
All right, Brian, before we let you go, let the listeners know how they can get a hold of you and the great work that you're doing.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days,
Right.
at BTOPOREK. You can find me at Forbes Sports, Liberty Ballers, doing some stuff for Bleacher Report as well. Although I've got my second son on the way in the next 2 weeks.
Man,
So
congrats, man.
Thank you. So I won't be writing very much
Right.
in the near future, but I'll be back in the saddle before long, I'm sure.
He is Brian Toporek. He is our NBA insider here on the 1010XL Wide World of Podcasts and a little show that we like to call the Open Gym. Brian, thank you so much, and we hope to do it again sometime down the line.
Of course, anytime.
When we come back, Los Angeles Lakers have yet to make any moves, but their name is across the rumor mill. We'll discuss that next here on Open Gym. Back here on the Wide World of Podcasts, it is 1010XL's Open Gym. RJ Saunders here with you. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. Also, another big thank you to Brian Toporek of Forbes as well as Bleacher Report, giving us insight to Team USA as well as the NBA offseason. I mean, October's going to be here before you know it, and we're going to get right back into basketball. It's going to come here quicker than you think. But before we get out of here, I do want to talk about the Los Angeles Lakers and what they have struggled to do here in the offseason. However, this is a team that 2 seasons ago made the Western Conference Finals under head coach Darvin Ham, and they made that trade late during the trade deadline where they acquired Jared Vanderbilt. They also acquired Malik Beasley. D'Angelo Russell was one of the main cogs in the Los Angeles Lakers' attack to finish out that season, and they were looked at as a team during that second half of the year after making the trade as a team that was going to hurt many other squads' feelings, and they did so. As a team that got in, I believe, via the play-in, they made it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, 4 wins away from making the NBA Finals that year. They would lose to the eventual NBA champions in the Denver Nuggets. LeBron James comes back the next year after the Lakers elect to keep that core of Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, as well as D'Angelo Russell. And he said it just feels great that we are keeping the same core that we had last season. You also acquired Rui Hachimura. It felt like Austin Reeves was coming into his own, and LeBron James talked about how much a turnaround has become the norm inside of Tinseltown since they had won the NBA championship in 2020. You also have to talk about 2019 when LeBron James was acquired by the Los Angeles Lakers. They end up trading Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Larry Nance. You trade all of your young talent to New Orleans to acquire, at the time, one of the premier players and probably top 10 players when he was at his healthiest in Anthony Davis. Now, the Los Angeles Lakers, after losing to the Denver Nuggets for a second straight year, a team in which Kentavious Caldwell-Pope said on the Draymond Green podcast, the Lakers should have beat us because we didn't have any more legs left. I roll my eyes when I say that because I believe that they should have. They finished the year out playing very strong basketball, and if they just finished in the second half of many of those games, we could be talking about the Los Angeles Lakers in a much different light. However, it hasn't worked for 2 straight years. Darvin Ham is now gone. JJ Redick is now in. But they feel like now they need to make adjustments to the roster. And a big name that you are hearing from the Los Angeles Lakers is that of trading D'Angelo Russell, Mr. Ice, in his veins. The problem is no one wants the services of D'Angelo Russell. You thought that potentially a trade could be there for Trae Young. If the Lakers elected to do so, it probably would have required them giving up 2 first-round picks. The Los Angeles Lakers felt that that was too steep of an asking price to acquire Trae Young. And if they didn't want D'Angelo Russell, you would have to probably give Rui Hachimura, who we'll get to in a second. Now, the rumor is that the Lakers are in talks with the Portland Trail Blazers and trying to acquire Jeremy Grant. Now, Jeremy Grant has a pretty hefty contract along with him. He is one of the better 3-and-D guys that we have in our league, but the Portland Trail Blazers not interested in a trade that's going to surround D'Angelo Russell. So what are the options that the Los Angeles Lakers have in terms of giving Portland something that's going to interest them, because they believe we have 7 million point guards anyway. What's the risk of acquiring another? And I believe that they say that because you want to see what you have in Scoot Henderson if you are the Blazers. And if you acquire a guy like D'Angelo Russell, I think one of 2 things happen. Number one, D'Angelo Russell, even though on an expiring contract, you're going to have to play him, if not start him. And if you do that, I think that's going to hinder the development in Scoot Henderson. You need to see what he is right now. At the same time, if LA is not going to be able to surround themselves with a deal that's going to involve D'Angelo Russell being shipped to the Portland Trail Blazers, you're going to have to find the requisite contracts to place around yourself to acquire Jeremy Grant. And that's going to probably start with Rui Hachimura, a guy who I believe 2 individuals in the Los Angeles Lakers front office are completely in love with. One being new head coach JJ Redick. When you heard the young guys in which he wants to develop and wants to be a part of the team of the future, Rui Hachimura's name was a part of that. You also heard guys like Austin Reeves. Dalton Connect is going to be a guy that JJ Redick is already scripting plays for because he feels that he is going to be one intricate piece. I think Blake Henson, once he continues to develop, he'll spend a couple years in the G League. I think post LeBron James, he is going to be a guy that they're going to want to develop on the main roster. Max Christie, you're going to have to assume, is going to get many minutes. But the Lakers find themselves now in an interesting conundrum, if you ask me, because even though you want to develop this young talent, you do have a guy in LeBron James as well as Anthony Davis who probably look at themselves and say, I think we do have one more great run in us. So, is acquiring Jeremy Grant the right thing to do when the second guy who is in love with Rui Hachimura is the guy who traded for him just a couple of seasons ago, and Rob Pelinka. Rob Pelinka, since Rui was at Gonzaga, fell in love with the guy. If he could have drafted him, he would have. So acquiring him, he felt like he had Kawhi Leonard-like ability to his game. Not calling him Kawhi Leonard, but felt that he had that sort of ability. So is he saying, well, we have Jeremy Grant at the house because how much of an upgrade, how much of an improvement is Rui Hachimura from that of Jeremy Grant? And could we make a Rui Hachimura into a Jeremy Grant-like figure without having to pay him Jeremy Grant type money right now? I do not believe that the Lakers have an answer to that question. So normally with LeBron James-led teams, you're going to see a high amount of turnover. Let me take you back to the Miami Heat days. They always had a high amount of turnover from their big three. You insert guys like Ray Allen, Shane Battier, Mike Miller. You also had, for a moment in time, Chris Birdman Anderson. It wasn't guys where it was a big significant change, but there were changes made. After the Cleveland Cavaliers won the championship, I believe that was 2016, they brought the same roster back. LeBron James, I believe, was an intricate part in terms of bringing back those guys and making sure guys like Tristan Thompson, Iman Shumpert, J.R. Smith were guys that got paid. Following that, after a loss to Utah, he said, we're too top heavy. He and Kevin Love, we just can't be the marquee guys here. We're going to need more. It's going to take more. So what did they do? They made that big trade where they acquired Larry Nance, Jordan Clarkson. You also had Rodney Hood there for a spell. Remember his name? And it worked out thanks to the greatness of LeBron James. They ended up making the NBA Finals that year. The Los Angeles Lakers, again, gave up all their young talent to acquire LeBron James. And for the most part, sure, it worked because you ended up winning an NBA championship, and those young pieces that you acquired turned into Anthony Davis. You got AD 2020 in the bubble. You win that title, whether people count it or not. I believe the NBA still is. Here's the reason why I do believe the Los Angeles Lakers do not want to give up on guys like Austin Reeves, who a lot of teams are interested in. And I don't believe that they want to give up on a guy like Rui Hachimura either, is because they look at Brandon Ingram. And this is just me. I think they still have nightmares over the fact that they let him go. Now he's one of the better young talents in the league. You also gave up on a guy like Kyle Kuzma, who was the perfect third piece where he would just stand and was almost one of the perfect spot-up shooters to the array of shooters that the Lakers had during that time when they made that championship run in 2020. You now no longer have those guys. JJ Redick is now so embedded in, we need to develop the guys that we draft and the guys that we acquire who are young post LeBron James. That's going to be the game plan now. So what are the Lakers going to do here? It's reported that the Portland Trail Blazers want to at least let go of either Jeremy Grant or Anthony Simons, who I believe the Orlando Magic would probably have some sort of interest in if he is to become available for the right asking price. But the LA Lakers have this LA tax thing where I don't think any teams are going to want to help them. There is a third option to this that I did not mention. They could find a third team that could acquire assets from the Blazers or even from the Lakers. I don't think that any team feels like it's worth it because no team is just going to straight up help the Los Angeles Lakers. If they bring back the same team, it looks like you're going to be a play-in team. Although LeBron James and Anthony Davis are playing real well for Team USA, I do not believe that it's going to be enough for them to be a top 5, top 6 team within the Western Conference. So they're, again, going to be fighting for their lives. Does Jeremy Grant do anything to help steer the tide in the right direction for the Lakers? I don't think that it would. And I believe a guy like Rob Pelinka as well as JJ Redick don't believe that it would. If there is a star player that's out there, and mind you, during the offseason as well as during the NBA regular season, there's always going to be one or two guys that are going to be available that you did not think would be available the time in which they became said available. If Rob Pelinka is saying we're just going to hold out on that, let that be known. Let that be identified. Let's roll the ball out. Let's see what we have. And hey, D'Angelo Russell may get hot. There may be a guy on a particular team that may get injured. Maybe a guy like D'Angelo Russell is something that interests the Brooklyn Nets because reportedly the Lakers are also interested in Cam Johnson. But that's yet to be seen whether or not they can make a trade with hopefully not being able to give up their 2 first-round picks. But a superstar guy right now for the Los Angeles Lakers that they're looking to acquire doesn't seem to be in the future. That hurts my freaking heart. But it's going to be Los Angeles Lakers basketball in a couple of months. It should be definitely interesting to see what the purple and gold do the remainder of this offseason and once we get to the trade deadline in February. That's going to do it for us here. I'm RJ Saunders. Like, comment, and subscribe to Open Gym here on the 1010XL wide world of podcasts. John O'Leary, the man behind the camera, making it all happen. A huge thank you to him. We'll be back and see you on the flip side here on Open Gym.